Welcome back to the Token Intelligence Show, where we help you and ourselves think through how to use AI well in this new era that we're in with this new technology. So, John, the question you asked me earlier this week
At lunch
today, actually, yeah, is whether AI is actually too expensive for some businesses.
Yeah.
Which I think is a great question because many people are trying some form of AI. But if you ask the average person trying to implement AI in a business, do you feel like you're getting unbelievable ROI when you look at the actual costs at the end of the day? Not everyone can answer immediately.
Yeah. I think there's two ways to look at the problem. One is the current economics, and one is the rapidly approaching future economics.
Yep.
Because this came up in my mind because there's been a lot of news this week around OpenAI and Anthropic making moves where clearly they're prepping for IPO.
Yep.
And once that happens, most people believe that the current subsidies where they have these plans that are unlimited, where you use thousands of dollars potentially of
Right.
credits, like that goes away or changes at least.
Yep.
So then businesses are, going to be left with, especially the mid-market businesses, because a lot of enterprise maybe is already paying the true cost.
Yep.
But especially mid-market, it's going to be left with, oh, like, can we afford this? Like, does this make sense?
So today we're going to answer that question. Let's figure out if AI is worth the cost. And we're going to do that by evaluating really three major vectors through which you can determine whether or not you might get high ROI. So we'll start with number one, and I'm going to ask you this because you have done this for your business,
Right.
and you are implementing this for other people's businesses. The first thing, and this is interesting, I see this a ton, is ability to use AI well. Anyone can open an AI tool and ask it a question, right? But to actually be an advanced user is pretty hard. Speak to that a little bit.
Yeah. I think the range of people's abilities is huge.
Mm-hmm.
And the range of people's perceptions of their own abilities is also huge.
Yep.
Right? So, like, yeah, I use AI all the time, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or I don't. Either way, the value might not be there. You could be using it all the time and not getting very much value. So It's not just a usage problem.
Yep.
And I think that we've covered this before, but the biggest gap is, are you using it to help you think better? I think the best people, like, that's how I'd categorize like how they're using AI, because that's your leverage, right? If you think better and you approach the problem better, you can solve the problem better and get the highest leverage.
Yep.
Whereas if you are just either one, using it like Google and just asking it, a question that you could Google, or two, maybe trying to tell it to do something for you.
Yep.
Check my email. That there's some value there, but the leverage is how many steps back can you take from that to think through, bigger and bigger problems and solve them.
Yep. Going one step deeper, actually, I think there are some techniques that are extremely powerful that very few people actually use. And I'll give you one example that I've seen. So you can use AI tools connected to folders that are on your computer or your desktop. And so I'll use Claude Cowork as the example. So normally, if you go to chatgpt.com, if you have an account, you log in, and then you can ask it questions, you can upload files, etc. And we now have the ability to connect to a folder on your computer. And so Claude Cowork does this really well, but a lot of tools do it. And it can be way more effective for analyzing a large number of files, analyzing a bunch of disparate files, and it's faster because it's running on your local machine and reading those files locally, as opposed to having to translate that into an API call, and hitting a service in the cloud, and processing the entire file as part of that payload. And so those types of things can make a big difference, but I think that most people, average users, are not using those. Do you agree?
Yeah. I mean, we were just talking about this where there are even some ways that the tool like leads you down as far as how to use it that aren't necessarily the best. Because if I were onboarded, I mean, I haven't been because I've been using it a long time, but the onboarding flow of like you created an account, you chat with the thing, and these little pop-ups of like add a connector or add a, whatever they're called, integration. And then, Google Drive might pop up or whatever common tools that people use. And you add all of those things, and then you just assume like that's the best way to use it.
Right.
But that's a perfect example of if you're trying to do a really major project to consolidate tons of information, the actual optimum way to do that is to have the physical files, PDFs, text files, Word docs, whatever they are, on your computer, and then have the AI access it via your computer. You have to wait. It works better and it's faster. And that's just a very simple example.
But there are lots of similar examples of different techniques, and it sort of varies by discipline.
Right.
So in the default state, I would actually say if you get a cheap GPT or Claude plan for people in your business, let's just say it's the $20 a month plan, I think you get a lot of ROI, probably, from the standpoint of personal productivity.
I think there's a potential for a lot of ROI, but not necessarily, because I would imagine that like most software, like how do SaaS companies make money? They make money at any given point in time, only a fraction of the people are using the software. Right? That's part of the...
Oh, interesting. Money. It's an adoption challenge.
Right. So, and then you buy corporate software, like, okay, we need an AI thing. We'll pick this one, maybe Claude or ChatGPT.
Yeah.
And then you buy it for 1,000 people. And like, who uses it every day? Like what fraction?
Yeah, that's
10%?
Interesting. Yeah,
who uses it once a week?
Such a good point.
Yeah, and then I think you just have this long, and then if we looked at, and then eventually IT comes in, audits like, oh, all these people haven't used it for 90 days. We're taking your license away, type of thing.
Right. Yeah, it happens.
But
yeah. I think it's a great point. This is my takeaway from, actually becoming a power user of AI and that creating a higher ROI. Is that you can't just drop AI into a business and expect people to create a huge amount of leverage for it. It's probably going to be a smaller number of people who are power users because they naturally gravitate towards that. What I've seen is that generally those are people who are power users of other types of software anyways.
Well,
right?
And the fun thing is that OpenAI and Anthropic agree with you because they've started consulting arms in the last few weeks.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, totally.
So
okay, so
I think that's very true.
Takeaway one is you actually have to be proactive, do some training, actually have an adoption program in order for people to leverage the tool.
And one more point on that. There's been a lot of criticism in the tech world, and this may spread outside of that, for incentivizing people to basically use the maximum amount of AI possible. Token maxing is kind of the tech world term for it. And valid criticism because people are doing wasteful things with it. But I think it's a little unfair, and businesses still have to think about how to incentivize people to use it. Maybe there's a better way, but I would say some way of incentivizing is probably better than none. Which is why I think people are doing that. Like they're doing leaderboards of like who's using it the most. They're doing these different things that just incentivize the behavior that obviously can be wasteful, or people can game the system. But that doesn't mean that like there isn't a reason to encourage people to use it.
Yeah, I think one of the learnings here, in addition to you have to be proactive, is that it's not magic. You still have to learn how to use a tool, and people still have to change their behavior.
Right.
Which is hard for anything.
Right.
I think once people generally, like once they see the light, we'll say, or sort of feel the magic of, wow, this used to take hours and now it takes minutes, that can help accelerate adoption because people, actually feel that they're more productive, and they are more productive.
Right.
But it's not just flipping a switch to get there.
Yeah.
Okay. The second area here is actually measuring ROI. So
Yes.
let's say that you buy a license for your business or buy licenses, for the people in your business, and you do a training program, so you're onboarding people. That is a foundation for, creating leverage through this because people are actually adopting it. But then you get to the point where you actually have to make a call on, are we getting leverage, which is an ROI calculation,
Right.
which you would do with any technology. We adopt this technology, it costs us some amount of money, and then we have to decide, are we getting ROI from that spend, right? So what's
And over what time period is acceptable?
Yeah, exactly, right? So, I mean, if you're switching ERP systems, you have a longer time horizon, right? Of course, because there's going to be a big migration and, and you may actually regress for some amount of time
Right.
in order to get the future gains, right? As opposed to, adopting a project management system, you would hope that in a quarter, you do the migration and things are getting better.
Right.
What is your mental model, though, for ROI with AI or technology in general?
So with ROI, I think most people jump to cost. But obviously there's two components to ROI,
Yep.
revenue and cost.
Yep. Which are, just explain those at a basic level. Like if you're buying software for your business.
Yeah, right. So at a basic level, and using AI specifically, cost, like for a services business, is some reduction. Well, actually, ironically, it's complicated actually for services because if it's a reduction in hours and the services some kind of retainer thing, there's a value there.
Right.
If it's a reduction in hours and it's hourly, like it's confusing.
Yep.
But generally, like let's say you're selling a physical good or you're have some kind of incentive for more efficiency, which every business does, like one way or
Yep.
another. That's the easy part. That's the cost reduction part.
A very simple example of that is expense tracking or time tracking or other things like that, where in almost any type of business, you would adopt that software in order to more closely track expenses,
Right.
to implement accountability, or to understand, is there slippage in time, in the time, or where are employees allocating time?
Yep. Or make it easy for employees to allocate time.
Right,
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah,
And so there's a clear cost savings there, right?
Right.
Like, okay, we expect that we're going to pay this amount for this expense tracking thing, and we're actually going to be able to hold people accountable
Right.
or whatever it is.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's the cost component. The revenue component, as far as we made more revenue from AI, is interesting for two reasons. One, there's a ton of AI FOMO out there, right? Of like, oh, well, they're using AI to do this thing.
Yep.
And underneath that FOMO is what I'm going to call fuzzy attribution. So, headline story, whatever company, typically it's saving money. Saving money is the easier measurable.
This goes back years, but the first major example of this was Klarna
Yeah,
saying we let go of
customer support,
a huge number, hundreds of people.
and then they hired him back. If I remember
And then they
right.
hired. Yeah, I don't
Yeah.
think all of them, but
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah,
But
right.
I mean, it was kind of one of those.
Right.
Yeah.
But that's on the
eating
cost
process.
side. I think there's a revenue example too, where like, let's say, our salespeople were able to double their outbound calls or our qualifying sales, like whatever something in that, sales arena, which is real. But there's a lot of components where like, was AI truly the full attribution there? Or is it because we really had to hone a process to let AI do it, for example?
Yeah.
Like there's all this like process internal business work that like we say AI, but what maybe we actually did was just carefully map the process. And we do have this thing that probably saves time, but part of it was the business process thing. We didn't really need the AI.
Can you think of an example where if you used AI to do something that would traditionally have been difficult or, that is a clear path to revenue, is there any example that comes to mind around a direct relationship there?
Yeah. We just did an episode on this. AI is really good for research. So researching prospects is a great use of AI that legitimately saves time and can I guess leads to cost reduction potentially,
Yep.
but also can kind of lead to revenue, because leads to revenue. My argument there is like, you probably just weren't going to do it, were you? And if you weren't, and then those
Yeah.
calls go better,
Yep.
or you reach out to better, more of the right people, then that is
Yeah,
revenue.
you can make more calls, right?
Right.
More calls means,
Right.
it's a numbers game, and so there's more at the bottom of the
So
funnel.
that, I think that is the most obvious
Yep.
one. Is yeah.
The A/B testing, ads or creative content, or publishing pages
Okay. Yeah.
could be another example that comes to mind for me.
Yep. I think a lot of companies can really up their creative game.
Yeah, exactly.
Like the
Yep.
average company's Facebook ad, like a display ad, or like a lot of people wouldn't have done video at all because it's too
Yep.
expensive. Now, like maybe you can do an AI video and do better
Yep.
than you would have, and then probably even depending on the company, up their game as far as a graphic ad.
Yep.
Sure.
Okay, I have 2 takeaways, and then I'm going to add one additional thought to this. So in terms of ROI, you have cost and revenue. And the takeaway on cost is, I think, just do the math and try to evaluate AI as you would any other service, right? It costs you a certain amount of money. Is it actually going to save you some amount of money, right?
Right.
And I think defining the metrics there is
To be measured
important.
in hours, or potentially reducing usage of other software. Probably
Yes.
2 of the big buckets.
Yep. So let's say that you can wire, an AI interface up to like a service, whatever it is, a CRM, whatever that is, a database or something. And so you actually have less human users of that, service, right? Or you have an agent that they can interact with that's the primary user of whatever
Right.
that service is, right?
Yep.
So instead of paying for 20 seats, you pay for 2 seats or
Yep.
something like that.
Yep. Yeah, I mean the easy one is reduce seat count until SaaS companies catch
Right.
on.
Yep.
And then on the other one is the human time. So if it used to be 20 hours of an analyst and 20 people had to have seat counts, and we went to like 10 hours of an analyst and 10 seat counts, then there's savings on both sides.
Yep.
Which is real.
Yep.
And that happens today.
Yep. And then the takeaway that I heard on the revenue side is really pick use cases that AI, especially starting out, where there is a pretty clear line to revenue
Right.
and it's not as blurry.
Right.
So that would be things like, is it increasing throughput in the sales and marketing funnel? Is it increasing the amount of iteration you can do on the creative side? Those sorts of things.
Yep. Agreed.
Are you developing prototype features and getting them in front of customers faster? Right.
Yep. Oh yeah, that's another great one.
The
Yep.
other
Customization in the I have to bring this one up because it's so big in the sales cycle, because AI is so fast, especially if you're in software world, to be able to show something like with dummy data of their thing, like more personalized and customized for like the deal and sales cycle. I think that's a huge one.
Yeah, totally.
Yep.
The one thing I'll add is I think that you can be too rigid with trying to measure ROI with
Yeah.
like a hard cost or a hard revenue. Because one thing that AI is wonderful for is helping people generate interesting ideas. Because you can build things, you can research things, you can explore things way, way faster than you would before. And so you can actually generate ideas or explore different things or make really interesting comparisons far easier than you could in the past. And it sort of augments that. And so I think there's actually a creativity and innovation element that's really hard to measure, but that is really powerful, because when you feel that spark of an idea inside of you, interacting with AI is a really good way to fan that flame.
Yep.
And so there's sort of an idea generation element to it that's pre-prototyping or
Yep.
creating a bunch of different ads, right? Which is kind of interesting. Okay, the third vector here is the actual hard cost of AI.
Yes.
And it was subsidized in the early days. And by when I say early days, it's, not that long ago. But it wasn't too long ago that you could buy a relatively inexpensive subscription, so let's say a couple $100, to your major AI provider of choice, and essentially feel like you almost got unlimited usage of the latest, greatest models. And that has tightened up, and there are a number of reasons for that. There's compute capacity, right? So they're just running out of GPUs and experiencing downtime, which is why X and Anthropic, sort of made strange bedfellows in the deal with Colossus, where these two theoretically opposed, companies that were, or competing companies, actually strike a deal. Very interesting.
Yep. And Colossus is for those that don't know, the data center.
Yes.
That I guess SpaceX
yes.
owns right now.
Elon Musk. It's Elon Musk's data center.
There you go.
And Anthropic was running out of compute capacity. And so they struck a deal, right? But also these companies are looking to go public. And so tightening cost, and so subsidizing user acquisition or usage or whatever the things that you subsidize sort of on your unbelievable unicorn growth trajectory, hyperscaler growth trajectory.
Right.
And so now the actual cost of this is becoming more apparent, right? The plans have gotten way less generous, and this is what I want to know. You use AI every day, you use it to run your business, you implement it for other companies. Do you think it's expensive or not?
Such a good question. I mean, obviously the answer is it depends.
Right.
There are still tiers of usage that are highly subsidized.
Yep.
ChatGPT's tiers, not on company plans, are highly subsidized. Same in Cloud.
It is the individual level is way more subsidized for sure.
Right.
Especially the middle tier.
And businesses are totally using those. It's small businesses, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Because it's
so there's that weird
more bang for your buck.
Small business prosumer stuff is still highly subsidized. Enterprise is getting less and less, if not, like mostly not subsidized at this point.
Yep. Which is difficult because increasingly you really need the enterprise controls around security and single sign-on and other things like that, right? I mean, if you're at any sort of mid-sized business, you should be using the security features of an actual business plan as opposed to having a bunch of individuals on an individual plan have your company data in their personal plan.
What's the old saying? Something like, if the product's free, you are the product.
Yes.
Something like that.
Yeah, exactly.
And then, the point of the free plans, the reason they do it is not just for adoption. It's like so they can have all the data to train on.
Exactly. Yep. So there is still value in sort of what sounds like a small slice. You can still get, a lot of leverage on sort of the prosumer plan.
I think the small businesses that haven't used it can use it on prosumer. Who knows how much longer, like a little while longer, maybe another year or two, and get a lot of value and be creative and do that. I think increasingly, so enterprise is like, let's call it pretty much at full price, minus the incestuous deals where people are trading compute for tokens. But, normal enterprise, full price. Yeah. Then you've got the Stripe underneath there where it's like, I think kind of mostly there, or at least like lightly subsidized. Then you have prosumer, which is highly subsidized, especially ChatGPT, which is that. But yeah, the point being, because back to your actual question is like, is it expensive? Is it worth it? Is what people are trying to figure out. And in the use cases we listed, I think it often is like, all right, we're going to work on revenue, and we think we can move this metric by doing account research and whatever. Yep. And then on the other one, it's even easier. And on the cost piece of like, there are a lot of SaaS subscriptions or software that is licensed per seat. And there are people that use the software that just want to log in and look at a dashboard or need some very basic information on a screen somewhere. Yep. That like, there's an obvious cost saving to say, hey, just talk to an agent about that. You didn't want to log in anyways, did you? Like, no, I didn't.
Exactly. Yeah. Just ask Claude.
Yeah. And then there's another class, which we can't get into right now, of which software is either so simple that like you can make it yourself, or is not simple, but the thing that you need is actually pretty simple, and
Yep.
you can make it yourself, or find somebody that decided to make it for themselves, make it good, and is now selling it for a fraction of whatever you're
Yeah.
paying for your current thing.
Yep. One thing that I'm interested in your perspective on is the model that comes out of the box with a lot of these
Yes.
services. So generally, if you just log into ChatGPT, you have a prosumer account, or you have, a business, a business tier plan or enterprise tier plan, the service defaults to their latest model. Now, it may not have everything turned all the way up, so you can toggle, things like deep research or, advanced reasoning. They have a bunch of different creative names for these, turbo, power mode, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
Boost. Those may not necessarily be turned on by default, but the model is generally the latest and greatest, which is also the most expensive.
Yeah. And it's interesting because there's not a uniform plan here. So if you looked at Gemini, Google's product, versus ChatGPT versus Anthropic, Claude, it's not uniform. It's not like there's 3 tiers and each of them has like an aligned,
Right.
like they're each kind of doing their own thing.
Right.
Like recently,
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
yeah. Like recently, Google's been really focused on speed and just massive scale because their product goes into the world's most popular search engine
Yep.
that has more users than any of these things.
Yep.
Still.
Yep.
And then Anthropic's been more focused on enterprise, right?
Yep.
And then ChatGPT, everything.
Yeah.
Still,
Yeah.
enterprise, consumer. They're trying to do it all. But as far as comparing them in general, on any of the paid plans, your default is not the absolute smartest version of it, but it is typically one of the best models that on a
it's in the 90th
ballpark.
90th cost percentile of what you can pay.
Right. And there are typically orders of magnitude cheaper options with any of those. So if you're
Yes.
with ChatGPT or Anthropic or whatever, and you're at this spot as a business where you're having to pay for usage, not just seats, because a lot of the business models ends up seats plus usage.
Yep.
And that's, I think, going to be a thing going forward. You don't have to use it on the default
Right.
setting, which it's orders of magnitude.
It is. It's wild. I think that's a huge takeaway for this. So I'm going to summarize the takeaway from this vector. So is it expensive? In the default state off the shelf, it can get very expensive. And it doesn't have to be that way. I think one of the big takeaways is that, especially if you're doing more basic tasks, reading a PDF or summarizing something, or doing basic search, you can put it on a way cheaper model. And it is way, way cheaper.
Well, the other thing is, especially on business plans, the cost isn't apparent to the employees. They don't know.
They don't know.
So
Yeah, and the form factor of the apps themselves, you have to click many, many times in order to actually get in there to figure out what it's costing.
Right.
But I think that's something that I've seen, and actually with my team that we've implemented, is there are certain things where we may be analyzing a really large amount of disparate types of information or files or context, or hitting different APIs to pull information from different systems. And for that job where it's doing the initial crunch of all of that, we sort of turn everything on, and it's very expensive, but it may run for 30 minutes at the most expensive setting. And then we'll actually bump it down to a way cheaper model. We're not even necessarily thinking about cost, but actually for certain tasks, the cheaper models are better because they're not trying to do as much. That's kind of a weird way to put it, because that's not necessarily true under the hood. But they work completely fine, and in some ways are better for certain tasks, than the latest and greatest model, right?
And a silly visual for this is thinking about a framing hammer versus a sledgehammer. Sledgehammers are big and fun and can do a lot of
Yes.
work, but there's a non-practical use for a sledgehammer.
Yes. Yep.
And it's a little different in that the smartest models can do all the things like pretty much just as well, but there's a cost component and they're slower.
Yes, they are slower. Yep.
And
And I think the answer is if you're gonna, build if you're gonna build a shed in your backyard, and you're gonna like pour concrete and or hammer a 4x4 into the ground,
right.
you need a sledgehammer and you need a framing hammer, right?
You need both. And the cost of operation analogy is perfect, because think about your physical effort in using a sledgehammer. That mirrors the cost of operation for the largest, best models. And then your physical effort in using a little framing hammer, it's just a lot easier.
Exactly. Yep. So, and this actually comes back full circle, which is a great place to land, in that the methodology of deciding when to use which model and then cost optimizing that for a business where you have a portfolio of different use cases and you're trying to calculate ROI is something that has to be taught.
Yeah.
The providers do not lay that out for you in a way that is straightforward, right? They sort of just default to something expensive.
Yeah. And I was telling you about this earlier. This is so interesting. There's a set of decently complicated tasks I wanted done, worked fine with the most expensive model. And then for fun, I was like, well, I wonder if it'll work on the cheaper model. Try the exact same instructions, changed nothing. It did not work. But then I asked the smarter model, hey, can you make a call to the cheaper one and optimize it to work? And it did, and it worked. So those are the really interesting meta things going on here, where because these are because these tools can talk to each other. You can actually use the smarter one to fix the one that's less smart, and then just use the less smart one. It's interesting.
Okay, so our takeaways is AI too expensive for the average business? Of course, the answer is it depends, but I think we've landed on if you are proactive about it, if you're proactive about training. If you really define your ROI cost clearly, or if you define your ROI equation clearly, whether that's cost or revenue, or whether it's intangible with something like, enabling more innovation in the company, trying to bring more ideas to life. And then if you learn how to cost optimize model usage so that you're not just paying the highest cost off the shelf, you're in a way better place to get ROI.
Yeah, if you do all those things, I don't think there's very many businesses that I would say it's too expensive.
All right, there we go. We answered the question. All right, thanks for joining the Token Intelligence Show, and we will catch you on the next one.